and boom goes the dynamite.
Welcome. Happy Monday. Happy start of a new week. Happy start of a new episode of Daily Dive. I am thrilled to be able to recap week one. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Joining me today, producer Michael Karvelis. We are breaking down all the action from the opening weekend and also giving our takes, our predictions, and our thoughts after watching one whole weekend that we can weigh in on. So I hope you guys have had a chance to subscribe. That's right. You thought I was going to talk about the games, but nope. Just reminding you first to hit that subscribe button. Check out the show. Each and every week, we're coming to you live, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, Daily Dive, Daily NLL conversations. So you don't want to miss it. And then also follow us on social media at Daily Dive Lax to keep up with all that we're tweeting and posting about as we're following all the action week after week. So, Mike, let's break it down. We had a lot of exciting games, some surprises, some maybe not surprises. But I want to start with the game. We had Cody on last week to break down the Saskatchewan Rush as they knocked off the defending champs, the Mammoth. Not only did they beat them, 18-6 is a pretty solid victory. I want to get your initial thoughts on this game and if this is kind of the reemergence of the Rush. Should we be taking this win in week one as a sign of things to come in Saskatchewan? What do you think?
I think of the teams that had the most pressure on them going into week one, it's got to be the hometown favorite Rush because they obviously had a down year. But man, from the face-off, it was just like they had a pep in their step, and the fact Dylan Ward was pulled in the early third quarter was pretty ideal of how this game. A good summary of how this game went was Dylan Ward being pulled. It was phenomenal. Their energy was unmatched, and I think they're back.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable as we were talking about this game last week, just previewing it and talking about in net with Alex Bouquet on one side, Dylan Ward on the other side, two of the best in the league. And to see Dylan Ward, who gets pulled after giving up 11 goals, definitely says a lot. 11 goals in 34 minutes. But also, I think one thing that jumped out at me is when you look at the end of last year, I know the Rush didn't have the postseason didn't reach the postseason like they wanted to, but they did finish the season on a 4-game winning streak. And you just could see them trending in the right direction at the end of the season. And there is a lot to be said about that. You end on a high note, you're playing great lacrosse, you build off that momentum to the next season. Whereas on the other side for the Mammoth, they are going to have a target on their back in every single game they step into. Everyone wants to knock off the defending champs. And so they should have been the ones to be hoisting up the NLL trophy at the end of the year. So I think that it makes sense to me. The Rush at home, coming off of that 4-game winning streak to close last season, absolutely was a surprise, though, that it was so wide open. I think I would have expected a closer win, but I also think that the Rush just played really well. Sometimes it just comes down to that.
Yeah,
what are your other thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's interesting because during the game, it seemed like they were attacking they call it the 5-hole, of Dylan Ward, like between the legs all game long, and I don't know if he never locked in, and that's why they pulled him so early. But again, it was good by the Rush, and hopefully the Mammoth can rebound because that was pretty ugly. But yeah.
Yeah, and it is only week one. I think there's something to be said about the start of the season. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. As cliche as that is, it's the truth. And I know we're gonna overanalyze every little bit because we can, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact it is the early part of the season. And not everybody, when you look at off season and preparing and stuff, not everybody has been able to prepare in the same way. And maybe we saw Dylan Ward get a little exposed, caught a little flat in week one. But I would be interested to see, okay, how does this continue week 2, week 3, week 4, to see if we are seeing any changes and any adjustments, or if teams are continuing to find the 5-hole and continuing to pepper Dylan Ward like we saw in that Rush game. So are you old? Is Saskatchewan team real? Need to see more after week 1? How are you feeling about the Rush and their potential this season?
So I am sold because I believe Alex Bouquet really was like for the full 60 minutes that he played, just locked in. Like they would be up by 10 goals, and he just like this, like on cloud 9, just ready to go. Sniper gang. I was impressed by Alex Bouquet. I think that's gonna be the biggest thing for them. Is just if their goalie can stay that locked in, it's gonna contribute to the entire team. Is roll over.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that whenever you can solidify major roles such as your goaltender, it definitely is a game changer. When you look at the difference
I think your mic just completely cut out on you.
Oh no!
That
My
was better.
apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just trying to give kudos, and apparently my mic didn't want to let me do it. I was just going to shout out the Arena Lacrosse League for doing an incredible job
Right.
developing NLL players. I mean, what a weekend we saw out west. And giving a shout out to Sea Spray Lacrosse Club. Adam Dixon had an 8-point game as they beat the Grizzlies in overtime. And you just love feeling along, with all of this excitement. You love following along throughout the course of the season. So as we're talking out west, I want to shift over really quickly and discuss the Seals Riptide game. San Diego knocks off the East Coast opponent by 1. And they were up, though. That's what makes this crazier. They had a compelling lead, and then the Riptide played themselves back into it. What are your thoughts after they blew that lead but still were able to squeeze away, with the victory?
So championship teams do this in all sports, even if like they do have a big lead and they squander it because the other team is just a professional team like themselves. It is nice when a team can just regroup and say, okay. Now, granted, I believe this game featured like a last second goal that was like, overturned. So that was pretty crazy. But my biggest thing from what not just the Seals side, I like Jeff Teat. I was blown away. I was kind of like wondering why they vote this guy number one. And he had the last 3 assists of the game for the Riptide, and that was just bonkers. But no, shout out to the Seals. You're right, had a fantastic time, and then the fact they were able to close the door is very good for their future this season.
And you know what? I'm actually not surprised by the way that game went. The Seals adding in players like Curtis Dixon and Kevin Crowley and having so much talent across their offense. You look at Berg and Jackson and Dobie, it's going to take them time to click. So we're going to kind of see the ups and downs as they go throughout the course of the season, as they're trying to figure out that chemistry, sharing the ball, just their role playing off of each other. But then on the other side, when you look at the Riptide, a young team, and you talk about Jeff, you talk about the success. I know we were mentioning last week, like, is he a legitimate number one? But he's proving a good case for himself. So when you look at the youth they have and the fact that now you're coming into another year, you've got more confidence, you got a little more swag, you're stepping into that role, you know what to expect. I think that says a lot about the way that he's been able to come into this league as a whole, that he has had the bar raised game after game and is continuing to do so even week 1 with how he performed in that game versus the Seals. So I think when you look at that, and then obviously even having youth with Steve Orleman and net, this is a team that's going to surprise some people. So I think we're going to see a lot of fight from the Riptide throughout the course of the season. I still don't know that this year will be the year, but I think they're going to be kind of an underdog. When you look at having one of the best, and according to some polls, the best player in the NLL across your attack, a lot to be said about it. So we've got more to get into, though. I know we're just scratching the surface because there was a lot of great action that happened this weekend. Firewolves Bandits make a statement there. What a game that was. Let's get into more about that and then discuss our 3 stars of the weekend as we get back here on Daily Dive. Welcome back to Daily Dive here live. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Joining me, producer Mike Karvelis. We've been breaking down the action from this past weekend and have to get into, there's so much we could talk about, but we've only got so much time on the show. So let's jump into really quickly before we discuss our 3 stars on the weekend. Firewolves Bandits. I know that last week we had play-by-play broadcaster John Gertler Jr. on the show, Bandits play-by-play guy, and he was singing all the praises of the Bandits and speaking so highly of them. And then the Firewolves showed up. What are your thoughts on this game, the way that Albany played? Let's start on that side with the Firewolves. Mike, what are you thinking? What are you feeling after seeing that game?
So I do want to give John credit because he did try to give a little bit of credit to the pace of the game the Firewolves would play. And I would say this game was probably the fastest game of the weekend, despite only being 11-10. But I loved their goalie was impressive. I'm trying to get his name, so I don't mess it up here. But anyways, their goalie was impressive. Especially after a down year last year, I believe. I believe the Firewolves, with the way they were like shut down to Hokananakoke, Dane Smith and Josh Byrne, and limited them to like 3 or 4 goals total. That was unreal. Especially when you're playing fast, you think the Bandits would get theirs. They didn't.
Yeah. And that is something that, we heard John speaking highly about the pace that the Bandits can bring. And, when you have players like an reigning MVP and Dane Smith and Josh Byrne, and you just have so much talent across your attack that has played together for years, at this point, it's tough to defend them. And Albany came out. And I think the biggest thing about a team like Albany, and actually you could say the same for the Riptide, these teams that don't have as many expectations on them, they're still in that building mode. I won't say rebuilding because obviously they're new in general, but they're still in a building mode. This is a younger franchise. They're still figuring things out. And so they don't have as much of that pressure on them as a team like the Bandits do that have championship level contention and aspirations that people are putting on them. So, I think it was a close game because of that, because this is 2 opposite sides, which is also why I feel like the Seals Riptide game was so close as well. So we're going to see these early season types of battles and chess matches as we go through. But let's also shift and talk about our 3 stars of the weekend. And I'm going to let you go first, Mike, of just sharing your thoughts on these 3 stars. I've got to give a shout out to Riptide. We've mentioned him before. Number 1 in the NLL currently, for at least for some polls such as LaxMag. Jeff Teat definitely gets a star for the weekend. Firewolves Doug Jamieson, as you were just talking about in net, coming off of a great game versus the Bandits, just allowing 10 goals to a very strong, potent Bandits offense. And then with that big win over the defending champs, Mark Matthews, 12 points on the day, 10 assists. So dishing out helpers left and right. They get my 3 stars on the weekend. And Mike, what are your thoughts on the way that Jeff Teat, Doug Jamieson, and Mark Matthews came into week 1, hit the ground running and said, I'm here?
No, it was fantastic. I know I want to give the credit to Jeff Teat because I did kind of harp on him last week and say, well, come on now. But this Doug Jamieson guy sold me, man. I don't see how you allow 32 shots on goal, not the shots, but on goal from those 3 guys, and you shut them down. It's unbelievable. It was like 32 of his 45 saves, I believe, which is unbelievable. I mean, the dude, last year when I was looking at the lacrosse magazine, the LaxMag players poll, I believe Jamieson had dropped because he had an off year after 2020, good year, then kind of dropped off. So he was like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still big Doug Jamieson, as the broadcast kept calling him. I loved it.
Yes. And Doug Jamieson has been a goalie that you've seen have a lot of moments that you just could recognize his greatness. And then some moments where he dropped off some. And that inconsistency has hurt him a little, especially as we talk about, we were just, mentioning some of the better goalies. It does come down to consistency. You want to be able to rely on at the end of the day, if the ball gets through, if shots are had, which are going to happen, that your goalie can get the job done. And when you talk about those 32 shots on goal that were saved by Doug, fantastic. That's incredible number. So when you look at the 3 stars of the weekend, I'm not sure if there's one that jumps out more than the other because they each in their own rights really helped lead their team, really made a statement in their opening game. Again, Jeff, 12 points, 12 loose balls in that game versus the Seals to lead the comeback. even though they fell short, defended and showed why he's definitely a top player in the NLL. Doug Jamieson also put himself in the top goalie conversation. Don't forget about me, Doug. He played against the Bandits. And then Mark Matthews showing the vet, showing what he does best with the Rush, putting this team back on the map as a team that's going to be a playoff possible team. So I have to ask you again. I'm definitely curious about your top five. Just your thoughts on, and I'm going to let you go first this time before I give mine. Top five teams. We're going to do this every week based on what we see. Now, obviously, we didn't see everybody play this weekend. It is only week one also. So I'll put all these disclaimers out there for anybody that wants to come at us for our fives. But look, that being said, based on what we've seen so far, Mike, who are your top five teams as of right now?
Should I go 5-1 and keep them guessing, or should I go one?
Keep them guessing.
Let's do 5. All right. Number 5 for me. This team scored 6 goals this weekend, but I can only help but say Dylan Ward is the reigning goalie of the year. Zed Williams looked really good. You know, sometimes guys like McLaughlin and others like Connor Robinson were not. I believe they just ran into a hot Rush team. So I'm going to go with the Mammoth at number 5. Number 4 for me was a team that was also having high expectations this year. Big Toronto Rock. They played like boulders. 19 goals. Got to give them credit. No, I'm sorry, bad. Number 3, the Buffalo Bandits. I know they lost, but they still have a squad. I still believe like they were like my number 2 or number 1 team before. So I'm still gonna keep them at number 3. Number 2, the Rush. Pound those chests, Saskatchewan. Looked incredible. And number 1, Seals. I think they played a very talented Riptide team. Maybe I'm biased because I picked New York Seafoam Green to win. But I'm just going to go with their Seals at my number 1. Again, Rush 2, Bandits 3, Rock 4, and Mammoth 5.
The defending champs at the bottom of that top 5 list. This is a tough one. It is so early in the season, and there's so much to be had and still to watch unfold. Based on what I've seen, though, I'm going to go. My number 5, I would put as the Toronto Rock. Just based on this. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rock at number 5. I'm going to go with the Riptide, actually, as a surprising number 4. I think I love to see a good youth. Look, I'm an Eagles fan, so the Riptide actually, to me, have a lot of similarities with what I'm seeing from my Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL right now. Of some youth, some guys that are, and this might not be the year fully, but I think they're going to be at least, a team that's come postseason is in the mix. So I'm actually going to go New York Riptide. And then I'm going to go at number 3, Mammoth. But I got to have the Bandits in the top 5. Okay, let me bump that down a notch because I'm counting people out here. So I'm making a 6th because why not? Toronto Rock at 6, the Riptide at 5. I'm going to go the Bandits at 4. I don't know that I think they still have some pieces that need to be adjusted. And I think a lot of people kind of have them figured out, even though they're very tough to defend. I'm going to go Mammoth at number 3. I'm not putting them at number 5 fully. And then I'm actually going to flip it and go Seals at number 2 and the Rush at number 1. I think the Rush did a lot in the offseason, and I think that this is going to be a team to watch out for. And even at the end of last season. So as of now, that is my top 6 because I just couldn't apparently pick a top 5. So
I think it's 6.
Our Daily Dive 5 just became a Daily Dive 5 plus 1. So we have more to get into, though, as we are breaking down our picks from last week. Now, we did not pick for every game, but we did pick for some, and we did pretty well. So we've got to break down our picks as well as look into a little bit more around the Lax Mag player poll. So more to come here on Daily Dive. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. right. Nothing like some Monday lacrosse conversation and get your week started. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm Renee Washington, joined by Michael Karvelis. We are breaking down the week one action. We're sharing our picks, our thoughts. We gave our top five, and for me, top five plus one, based off of what we saw in week one. And then now it's time to break down our picks from last week. So, we want to see how we stacked up with our picks. Again, we did not pick for every single game, so that disclaimer out there. But in week one, I picked Halifax and Toronto to win correctly. And then, Mike, you were 3-2, picking Rochester, Saskatchewan, and Toronto to win. So we're going to step this up a notch and do a better job moving forward of actually writing down and tracking our picks so that we can keep score. Why not have a little competition to see how we're doing? And for everybody that is tuning in, watching, drop in the comments how you did this week. Share with us. Of course, bring your questions, bring your comments, join the conversation, and let's talk it through together about our picks from this week. Any of these that you were surprised by the most, that you just knew you were correct about and you were not?
Well, there was only two, Renee, that I was incorrect about. I'm kidding. I would say my biggest one that I missed, because I missed the Riptide, the Wings. The Wings just, I know Mrs. Renee over here picked against her home birds. I picked the wrong birds in that one. I did pick the Wings, and they were not competitive. That was the opening game on Friday, and I told you guys, like, on the show Friday, that Halifax was, like, really good after one quarter, and I hope that wasn't a thing, and it was a thing again. I don't know what the Wings needed to do differently. It's funny, the Thunderbirds of the team that scored 18 goals, I guess they were definitely one of them, but I felt like they could have been beat, and the Wings just said, "Nah, we're good. We're good." Shout out to you, though, for that game.
Well, this is a Thunderbirds team that did allow less than 11 goals per game last year. They defensively can lock you down. And when you're putting up 18 and you're allowing on average less than 11, that's a pretty good in your favor. And being at home, as we talked about before, definitely helped. I was definitely surprised at the wide gap, but I did pick for the Thunderbirds to jump out to a great start. And I thought the Wings were going to work themselves back in it, but still inevitably lose. So I was 2 for 3 on that. They did jump out to a quick start. The Wings did lose, but they were not able to ever close that gap and make it a little bit more competitive. But a lot to keep an eye on for the Thunderbirds moving forward. That was a surprise. For me, I know I picked against the Rush and picked the Mammoth to win. That was a game that I thought was a toss-up, a coin flip that can go either direction. I could see both sides of it. So I have no problem in admitting I was wrong. The Mammoth did lose, but what a game it was to start off, that West Coast battle of the Mammoth versus the Rush. So I know we talked on this a little bit last week, and we're going to continue to iron this out as we go along, especially this week. Lax Mag player polls that dropped. We love a good poll. We love having these discussions about who's the greatest, who's the top dog. Any of these surprises, starting with Tehoka Nanticoke, excuse me, always a mouthful to say. 85th after a good rookie season. I know there were a lot of great rookies last season that, as we talk about Jeff Teat being at that number one spot overall, a lot of rookies that came into the league and put up some impressive numbers. But any other surprises on your end that you saw from the player polls?
I do want to touch on the Tehoka one, because I felt like it's, again, Jeff Teat shut me up this week. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of his, but it is very interesting how one dude can be on the Riptide and be a rookie himself and get to number one already over the MVP, over the goalie of the year. And then the other rookie, just because he's on a stacked roster, the players think, oh, he's not that good. 85 is still good, but I just feel like 85 compared to one, I don't know if those two are that far apart. If we're going to give the rookies their praise, I dig it. I love it. I don't know if I could do that.
I love that point that you make, Mike, because I agree with you. And that's something that jumped out at me. If Jeff is having this success on a team that's more established, are we having the same conversation? But I see both sides of it, because you're putting up those numbers on a team that did not do well. You're having 100 plus points in a season, your rookie season, on a team that struggled. Versus if you were having those numbers on a successful team, we'd be arguing the opposite. It's because you've got if he was with Buffalo, for example, like Jehoka is, it's because you've got Josh and Dane around you. So I don't know. You can argue both sides of it. And I think that's what does make it more compelling is because you look at the success Jeff is having with the Riptide. That's something that's hard to do, to be carrying a team as a rookie and put up those numbers. And it's not just goals. I mean, it's goals and assists. And you're setting teammates up to score. You're also scoring. You're stepping up in big moments. We talked about this past weekend, those 3 assists at the end. So I agree that it's odd that it's such a big gap. I think that disparity is what's the big question mark.
I
When you
do want to mention that
numbers. Go ahead.
Tehoka is pronounced Tehoga. And
Oh,
that was on me as well. That was on me as well. Hey, I will bow down and say I agree with that. So Tehoga Nanacoat. Hey, great name in general. I don't care what his name. That's a great name. I don't care how you pronounce it. I do care, but obviously, hey, I don't want to compare. You're a basketball fan, right, Renee?
Absolutely. I'm an all sports fan.
Same. So tell me if, like, and again, I'm not calling Jeff Teague like a Kevin Love or a Kyrie here, but tell me, like, when Kevin Love was in Minnesota, averaging a bunch of points and rebounds, when Kyrie was in Cleveland, averaging a bunch of points, but they weren't winning, and would we say the same if he was on a better team? And that's why I like your point about that as well. Like,
Yeah.
I can see both sides as well, though.
I can. I see both sides. I think this year will be a great year to just kind of see a little bit more, obviously, but I can see both sides of it. Depending on the people around you, we argue all the time in sports. It's the people around you that get you the stats, that you get the numbers, versus the other side. If you're carrying a team, that you're, as we talk about, you say basketball. Someone like Damian Lillard's another great example. Like you look at these different athletes across sports. That's why Jalen Hurts is the MVP in the NFL. But when you look at these players across sports, it's like if your team is doing well because of you, and you're getting the guys around you better. So that's where I think Jeff gets that next level boost because it's like you're not doing this on a top team. You came into the Riptide and were able to have this success. The last thing I want to touch on really quickly, though, as we're talking, I know we've been talking about players and specifics on the NLL. Bigger picture, that 71% number. 71% believe that the PLL and NLL should create a positive partnership. I'm going to let you go first on this one. What are your thoughts? Agree or disagree, and why?
I was interested to know yours as well because I thought we'd be on the same page, but from the looks of that, I don't know if we will. I think we'll be on the same page here. I'm all for what the players want. I understand, and I think a lot of this is, and I could be wrong, but I do think a lot of this poll, 71% saying that, is they do play in the PLL as well. But I also think there's a happy medium, or should I say an unhappy medium you can have where you can play in both leagues, but I still think the rivalry is better. Because I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest lacrosse researcher here, but box and field are different to me. Like I can watch box over and over, highlight after highlight. I cannot do that with field. But full disclosure, if it was up to me, if I had to get rid of one of them, it'd be the PLL. Sorry.
The PLL.
But to me, the NLL, they can work together and letting their players go over there. But you should not say, oh, well, happy days and wonderful peaches. And can't do that. Can't do it.
Yeah. I always love cross collaboration and promotion. I think it really helps. I'm going to take the Philly sports teams, for example. You saw when the Phillies were on their World Series run and the Union were in the MLS final and the Sixers were getting started and the Eagles and the Wings, and everybody was posting about each other and tweeting about each other and like supporting each other. I think their partnership, there's so many different levels to how you have that partnership. So to me, I think cross promotion is great because it's great for the sport of lacrosse. Whether it's box, whether it's field, it doesn't matter. You want to still promote all the great athletes across lacrosse. But I do think that there needs to be a clear separation. I think for brand purposes, because it is two different types of games. You look at the way even they are structured, the PLL with their model, I think it works. I think it's a great idea how they get different cities and they're playing, all over, like as a league versus the NLL, which is the traditional home and away. Like there's different aspects, not only to the rules and the format of the game, but even the format of the leagues that I think it's for branding purposes better to have separation. But I would love more cross promotion. I think that is always always helpful if they can shout each other out, if they say like, hey, like we're rooting for you, go so-and-so in the whatever, I don't know. It is their same players. And I want to compare it to the last thing before we wrap up. The WNBA actually does that a lot with their players. And even the MLS is doing it currently with the World Cup, where they're shouting out players that are playing internationally. That's the same feel. So if you have a PLL team that is shouting out their player doing well in the NLL, I think that's a more organic way to do it. Like Josh Burns getting a shout out for what he's doing with the Bandits. When you have those opportunities to shout out your team and it makes more sense versus forcing it, I think that's what could work. So I'd love to see more cross promotion, maybe not true partnership in this PLL NLL relationship. But we've got more to talk about. It's only week 1. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of Daily Dive. We are going to continue breaking down week 1 action, previewing the games this upcoming weekend, also talking through more around all the different polls and different articles that are dropping around preseason predictions and giving our own. So as always, hit that subscribe button. Keep up to date with all we've got going on. Also be ready to come join us tomorrow through Friday, 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Bring in the comments, bring in the questions as we are talking through more around the NLL. So for my producer, Mike, I'm Renee Washington saying so long from Daily Dive. Have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll see you back for more Tuesday here on Daily Dive.